Yo, 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 what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. Once again, still out of town, so I'm in a hotel right now, so I apologize if the lighting looks weird, if it sounds weird at all. Hopefully, everything should be good with the setup. I appreciate you guys watching this video and continuing to watch these despite me not being at my normal setup. I promise it'll be back in about 4 or 5 days, so just wait on it. It'll be back eventually. But for right now, let's talk about the game that happened tonight. After tonight's game, and after, looking at years and years, there have been about 74 years of NBA history, looking at every single team, every single statistic, went through every single statistic that they have out there for every single team. I think I've decided that the 02 Los Angeles Clippers might just be the greatest NBA team of all time. After going down 0-2 in their first round series against the Mavericks, they won in 7. After going down 0-2 to the Utah Jazz in the second round of the playoffs, they won the next 4 games and won in 6. The first time a team has ever come back from 2 0-2 deficits in the same playoffs. And then tonight, going into game 3 against the Suns, down 0-2, not just that, but with Chris Paul, an MVP candidate, coming back to play for the Suns, theoretically, being down 0-2 to a team without Chris Paul, with Chris Paul coming back, you should go down 0-3, right? That's what I thought. And instead, the Clippers won by 14 points. It doesn't make sense. The Clippers just seem to throw the first 2 games of every series. Maybe it's some weird, Tyronn Lue strategy or something. Maybe this is why so many people speak of him so highly as a coach, because he just throws the first 2 games of every single series and decides to just win the rest. I don't know what adjustments Tyronn Lue finds after the first 2 games of every single series, but I've said this in a previous video. The first 2 games of every series, he coaches like Luke Walton, and then the next 4 or 5, however many it takes, he just coaches like Greg Popovich. I don't know what it is about this Clippers team, but they're the exact opposite of what we saw last year. Last year, every time the Clippers got up big, they would collapse. This year, they always get in a hole, and they always end up coming out on top. I don't know what it is, whether it's Tyronn Lue being the coach instead of Doc Rivers, whether it's the personnel just being different, because there are different guys playing different roles on this roster. Kawhi Leonard is still not playing, and they still took this game from the Phoenix Suns, a Suns team that dominated the Denver Nuggets, and the Denver Nuggets were good. They had the MVP on their team. They had a bunch of solid role players. They were a team that, despite not having Jamal Murray, was really tough and beat a tough Portland team. And so, theoretically, without Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers shouldn't stand a chance. Yet they do. And they keep doing it. Going against the Utah Jazz, even though Donovan Mitchell was banged up and Mike Conley didn't come back till Game 6, the Jazz probably should have taken that series if you were just looking at the numbers and looking at the teams on paper. But there's something different about this Clippers team. Maybe it was they had to blow that 3-1 lead that they had last year in the second round to become the team that they are right now. Maybe they had to go through that adversity to come out on top. Maybe they had to show themselves in that first round that, hey, we can beat a team despite being down 2-0 and facing a great player in Luka Doncic, and now they just keep doing it again. I don't know what it is. I don't know what makes the Clippers not get off to a hot start, what makes them suck so much in the first 2 games of every single series. Theoretically, they could be up 2-1 right now if they had just stopped a DeAndre and lob, but that was an incredible play. The Suns deserve that victory. But they theoretically could have been up 2-1 if they had just stopped the lob. If Paul George had hit some free throws, a couple different things end up going their way. They could be winning in this series. That's just not the way it goes. The Suns execute very well and deserve their 2 wins, but the Clippers deserve the win tonight. We saw a really poor performance from both Chris Paul and Devin Booker, 2 guys that have been amazing in these playoffs and over the course of this season. Devin Booker especially making his rise to stardom, maybe even superstardom, eventually starting in these NBA playoffs, and he only had 15, 5, and 5, which is way below the numbers we're used to seeing him put up. In Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, Devin Booker put up a 40-point triple-double, his first triple-double of his career in his first ever Western Conference Finals game. He's built for the big stage, and tonight he just kind of came up a little short. It's going to happen. Players are going to have rough games, and the Clippers really kind of keyed in well on him and Chris Paul tonight. Chris Paul coming off from having COVID, so even though he had a vaccine and he wasn't out typically as long as players are out with COVID, I'm not going to give him too much crap for the way he played tonight, because being out that time and having COVID, whether or not it actually gives you symptoms, it can affect you, and so I'm not going to give him too much crap. He, like Devin Booker, was really inefficient, but he did have 15, 2 rebounds, 12 assists. but both of them do need to be better going forward. A big loss for them in this game was the absence of Cameron Payne, who really just disappeared. He got like kind of hurt, but it didn't feel like it was anything too massive, and then he just ended up being out for the rest of the game. It was a big loss, and I never really thought I'd be saying that the reason they lost this game, or one of the biggest reasons why a team in the Western Conference Finals lost a game, was because Cameron Payne was gone. But that's just how good he has been over the course of this series, over the course of these playoffs, and over the course of the year for this Suns team. He has been their engine and their motor on that second unit. And while Chris Paul is definitely the better player, Cameron Payne's been having a great run himself. And not only that, but when the second unit comes in, they want to have his scoring out there. And so when he's not out there to help facilitate the offense, give them some timely buckets, it really hurts their second unit. Off the bench, it was Cameron Johnson with 12 points, and then the rest of the scoring was 4, 2, 2, and 2. And 2 of those points were Cameron Payne, who played 4 minutes in this game. Hopefully he's able to come back for next game, because the Suns really do need him. I've been seeing a lot of people say that Cameron Payne is even to Chris Paul's production and value to this team, and that's just not at all true at all. But he is really good, and he is deservingly going to get a bag this offseason, and it's going to suck if that part of what he has proven and shown in the playoffs, the continuance of that is taken away from us. So I'm hopefully he's able to get back on the court. As for the Clippers side of things, the Clippers just executed really well. Not just on the offensive side of the ball, specifically Paul George, Reggie Jackson, and Zubac, who all three of those were really good tonight. But on the defensive end as well, like I said, Chris Paul and Devin Booker had bad games, and typically those are guys we don't see have bad games on their own. Those guys, most of the time, are going to be big-time performers. So they had to have done something, right? And they did. Patrick Beverley played really good defense on both of those guys throughout this game. Paul George played 43 minutes of really solid defense as well as solid offense. He was kind of inefficient, but I'm going to cut him some slack because he had 27, 15, and 8. And like I said, played some absolutely great defense on some great Suns offensive players, as well as hit a half-court shot that ultimately kind of sunk the Suns team in the end. It really kind of pushed that lead forward, and it felt really deflating. Like, as soon as he hit that shot at the end of the third quarter, it felt like it was the Clippers' game to lose at that point. Terrence Mann had 12. The two other big guys that I was talking about, Zubac and Reggie Jackson, Zubac had 15 and 16. And given DeAndre Ayton had a great game, but DeAndre Ayton's kind of just taken another step. So one of the biggest concerns for me for the Clippers coming into this series was, how do you stop DeAndre Ayton? That's how good he has become. He's a guy you need to look at and think of a way that you're going to stop him. Because the Clippers in their last two series have gone small. They faced Kristaps Porzingis and Rudy Gobert as their two big threats to score inside, and neither of those guys really ever look for inside shots. So they've been playing Nick Batum and Marcus Morris a lot at the center position because Zubac kind of got played off the court. And so he had to be ready and come into this series with the mindset, they need me to help stop DeAndre Ayton. If you put Marcus Morris or Nick Batum out there, they can be kind of physical with him, but ultimately DeAndre Ayton is just going to back them down and he can look for his own shot, unlike the other two might do. So Zubac, coming into the series, had to play big minutes. And tonight he had 16 rebounds and 15 points in 33 minutes. That is exactly what they need from him. If they can get that from him every single game, they have a good shot of winning this series. Zubac was super important in this game. And Reggie Jackson, like I said, with 23, he's just transformed into a completely other player than we've ever seen him before in these playoffs. He's just stepping up in a big way. And I think that's the biggest thing for this Clippers team is last year it felt like so many guys were shrinking in the moment. This year, every single Clippers player knows that they need to be ready at all times, and at any point they could be used in whatever role Ty Lue needs them to be used in. You need Marcus Morris or Nick Batum to go out there and play center, they'll go do it. Luke Kennard didn't play at all to start the playoffs or like at all at the end of the season, but they needed him for offense in the end of that Maverick series. So what'd they do? They brought Luke Kennard in and he got buckets. That was exactly what they needed him to do. At one point, Patrick Beverley was out of the rotation for some of these playoffs. And today they said, hey, we need you to help guard Devin Booker and Chris Paul, two of the best guards in the entire NBA. And he said, all right, I'm up to the task. Every single player on this team knows that they need to be ready at all times, and they step up every single night. Even when they lose, different guys are stepping up. Terrence Mann is a guy that If I had told you someone on this Clippers team had an insane game to close out the Utah Jazz, Terrence Mann might be 8th or 9th or 10th on that list of guys that you would have picked to have an insane game to beat the Jazz. But he's a good player. And because they've told him, stay ready, when Kawhi went down and they put him in that starting lineup for that game 6, even when the Jazz went down, or the Jazz went up by like 26 points, he was ready. He was like, okay, we can get back in this game. And that's the difference for these Clippers. That's the difference when they go down 0-2, and that's the difference between this Clippers team and last year. Last year, they were the exact opposite, and I've been saying this. The Clippers this season, to me, have felt like more of a championship team than last year's Clippers team ever did. I never really got the hype for last year's Clippers. Something about watching them, they just didn't feel like they were a championship team like most people thought they were. And now, this year, I see it. And it was far before the Western Conference Finals that I saw it. I made a video months and months and months ago saying that this Clippers team was not the same as the Clippers last year. These Clippers are more well balanced, they are more ready to go, they don't crumble in the face of adversity, and they trust each other more. Guys aren't worried about collapsing because they know that if they're not doing everything up to the level they need to do, the next guy's going to step up until they are ready to perform at the level that they need to. Paul George could have a terrible game, and Reggie Jackson might step up and drop 30 out of nowhere. Or Terrence Mann could drop 25 on any night because they're moving the ball, they're scoring the ball, they're trusting each other, and they trust in themselves. This Clippers team believes they can win. Last year's Clippers team also believed they could win, but they almost acted like they had already won. These Clippers know they haven't won anything and know they have something to prove. And through this game, through every game 3 so far, the apparent greatest team of all time, the 0-2 Clippers, have proved themselves in each of these games. They're going to have to go win another one. You can't go down 3-1 to Phoenix. If you do, you're going to lose. If you tied up 2-2, though, it's anyone's series, especially if you can get Kawhi back. If you can get Kawhi back, these Clippers are more and more looking like the team to win it all. That's if they get Kawhi back. If they don't, I don't think it's going to be possible. I just don't think they'll have the talent to hold on right until the end. But you know what? I'm not going to say that because at this point, with the way these Clippers play for each other and play as a team, who knows what's going to happen. So those are my thoughts on this game. Let me know what you thought about this game. Let me know what you think about this series. Do you see what I'm saying about the Clippers from last year to this year? Are the 0-2 Clippers the best team of all time, like I'm saying? I appreciate you guys watching this video. I'll see you guys later.